the issuance by the Cumberland County Municipal Authority of tax-exempt revenue bonds for Dickinson College financing request. Attorney Gilbert.
Thank you. This is the time set for the, what's called the TEPR hearing for the Cumberland County Municipal Authority issuance of bonds for Dickinson College. Here with me today on behalf of Dickinson College is Kristen Kostecki, who's the VP with Facilities, Sean Whitty, who's the VP Financing, and then we have Peter Edelman and Stephen Arose from Stevens and Leader, bond counsel for the project. This is a refinancing along with some new money for some projects at the college. The authority has been involved with Dickinson College in the past in financings. As with every financing the authority does, none of the authority's assets or taxing powers or none of the county's assets or taxing powers are pledged in connection with the financing. The college is going through the authority merely to obtain tax-free financing, and the purchases of the bonds would just have to look towards assets of the college for their security. This hearing is simply to take public comment, and if there is none, the hearing should be closed after my remarks. And certainly we're here for any questions from the public or from the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Any questions from anyone? Any comments from anyone? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is our salary board. Call that meeting to order. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Duke-Ledbetter?
Present.
Commissioner Hertzler?
Here.
Commissioner Eichelberger? Controller Whitson?
Here.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any public comment on salary board? Hearing none, minutes of November 21st. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, we have approval of reclassification of children and youth services salary board actions.
I'll make a motion to approve those actions.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't take any pleasure in speaking on the record about this, but I believe that it needs to be said, and I believe that our employees need to know at least where this commissioner is coming from. I'm a very reluctant vote to approve these reclassifications. It is extremely unfortunate, in my opinion, that 21 of our dedicated children and youth services caseworkers have been placed in a situation where their annual salaries are now going to be reduced because of the mistake that was made not by them, but by a 2-to-1 vote of the prior Board of Commissioners to implement salary benchmarking results that were premature, not properly vetted, and flawed a year and a half ago. This is frankly one of the several unfortunate consequences to grow out of that action that granted a minority of our county workers a $2.3 million mid-year pay raise. The only saving grace here for these employees, these children youth service workers, is that the mistake of making these positions exempt has been corrected, and they will be allowed to draw overtime pay for overtime that's actually worked. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I think it'd be remiss to let that go without mentioning that the difficulties, many of the difficulties that were posed as a result of this classification really were deeply rooted in interventions by the state's Department of Labor, this governor, as well as peripherally the overtime regulations that came out of the White House recently in the middle of this process, which greatly complicated our efforts to try to implement merit-based compensation. So there's plenty more to be said, but a lot has already been said. It's not really productive to do.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Gary. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have approval of all other salary board actions. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for those actions.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any other business to be brought from the board? Is there a motion for adjournment?
What was it?
For adjournment. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now call the Cumberland County Regular Board of Commissioners meeting to order, and we have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Nicolao?
Present.
Commissioner Herzler?
Here.
Commissioner Eichelberger?
Present.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any public comment? Hearing none. We have on the table here minutes of November 17th and the 21st. Is there a motion for approval?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of personnel transactions. We'll start with item 5A, approval of children and youth services personnel transactions. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments?
Just that I would, again, express my reluctance, but I will support the motion.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of other county and city NRC personnel transactions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of proposed resolution 2016-32, approving in accordance with section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, the plan of financing of the Cumberland County Municipal Authority, excuse me, and declaring that it is desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Cumberland County, for the Cumberland County Municipal Authority to undertake a project for Dickinson College. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The commissioners mind if we excuse ourselves?
You may be excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Good.
Thank you.
Take care.
Point of clarification. From Keith, what exactly does this bind us to?
Nothing, you're just approving it. It doesn't bind you to anything, but it's a requirement that it be approved so that they can qualify for tax-free bonds.
Thank you. All right, next we have approval of the memorandum of understanding between Cumberland County and the Cumberland County Library System. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments?
Mr. Chairman, on the record, and I want to compliment staff and also the folks at our Cumberland County Library System for the hard work that was put into this memorandum of understanding. I want to note for the record that one of the reasons for this year's decision or pending decision by this Board of Commissioners to increase the Cumberland County's dedicated library tax is the direct result of the state's failure to fund its fair share of our libraries over the past 8 years. In fact, we've lost some $5 million in state funding over the past 8 years. But we recognize that the importance of our libraries to our community as a whole. And in particular, I want to note that one of the things I'm particularly interested in that will increase the relevancy of our libraries to serve young and old is the creation of intergenerational programs at our libraries, which is part of this memorandum of understanding. We did have a follow-up meeting on that just a little while ago today, and I believe that this is an important step forward and will be a good thing for our community. So with that, support the memorandum of understanding.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the 2017 Cumberland County Affordable Housing Trust Fund draft budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of acceptance of holiday tree donation by the Conservation District. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the 2017 budget, resolution 2016-31, adopting the 2017 budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. I'll second the motion. Any comments?
I will note that this budget holds a line on taxes for the general fund budget, and it includes many important priorities, including some additional funding for farmland preservation in the 2017 budget year.
Any other comments?
Yes, I have some comments. We did have the opportunity to speak, all of us, on this issue at length at Thursday's workshop, but for those who weren't here, or maybe perhaps just for the official record, I do have some items that I want to reiterate. I had originally intended to proudly vote for the tax increase budgeting in this year. And we did have one that was presented to us by the finance office, and it was voted unanimously by this board to be put on display for the requisite 30-day period. That budget is not the budget we are voting on today. And that is the reason that I feel compelled to change my position to a negative vote on this budget. And I wanted to take just 3 or 4 minutes here to explain why that is. I really have 2 major objections to this budget. That first is the bait and switch method in which this was presented. This, as I say, this is not the budget that we have essentially done our reviews on. The method in which it was changed at the last minute, I think, raises serious questions. We have insufficient time to analyze the impacts of the new budget or to develop a truly robust planning system for making sure that those dollars are put to good use. And secondly, and I don't mean that in order of priority, this budget just spends too much. It spends too much without regard to how the county can absorb it and still maintain fiscal integrity. Now, I don't think it's any secret to most of the folks in this room, over the last several years, this county's been working very hard to overcome a seriously unfavorable budget situation that was both widely reported on in the news media, as well as analyzed in great depth by state and county officials looking for solutions to the county's budget imbalances, including compelling this county into the state's early intervention program for financially distressed communities. This was all quite an undertaking and has had a very long hangover effect on this county, both in terms of just the numbers, but just as importantly in terms of the impacts on the psyche and morale of our workforce that delivers the services. The budget situation that I'm referring to resulted in small part from the fact that we had a poor economy during the late 2000s and into the early part of the current decade. But the bigger factor simply was poor decisions, specifically that demonstrated a very similar disregard for the long-term financial impacts that I'm afraid that we're looking at right now. Over the last several years, last 2 or 3 years, the county has been implementing major management and organizational changes, in part because of those, essentially the trauma that was done to this county's organization. But the short-term solution to that was simply a major tax increase that closed our financial gap. My feeling at the time was that we had to do something to buy ourselves some time to address the longer-term issues. And that's the important part that is much harder to address effectively, the longer-term issues. The executive management team has been exceptional in addressing this problem, and our budget team should be applauded once again for delivering another post-crisis budget to us, the original budget that we voted on, which held true both to accepting our need to address growth and quality of life issues, as well as addressing the need for spending restraint. How many times have we heard the management team tell us that our costs are manageable if we exercise vigilance? We've been reminded numerous times about the long-term projections looking promising, despite the fact that this county, as a growing county, is going to experience many higher costs of operation But even in spite of that, we believe we can tame this beast. We've been reminded numerous times by staff of that, numerous times. This budget, which was changed at the 11th hour, does not represent the type of fiscal vigilance that we have been implored to exercise. It's more troubling because it is not a one-shot deal, as rather it clearly should be seen as the beginning of a new phase of major spending increase. So we will have multiple years of impact to this. And despite some ludicrous claims, these increased costs cannot be covered simply by shifting dollars within the current budget framework, at least not for very long. So the bottom line is vigilance does not come cheap. We should accept that and act accordingly, or simply walk away from that commitment and admit that the county's throwing in the towel. And what that would mean is to do it the right way, that no more credit card financing. We know this is going to drain reserves. We know that ultimately is going to hasten the occurrence of tax increases much earlier than what we originally anticipated. The responsible thing to do, if you want to put these big spending increases forward, would be to man up, pay for it now, put a tax increase on the table, and vote for it. So, but that apparently is not even been discussed as an option. Frankly, we have many options that have not been discussed, and yet we're moving ahead very rapidly and without adequate consideration. So we do know we have a long list of anticipated costs in the future. We know those reserves are going to become essential, particularly if the state enters into as serious a budget crisis as what we are anticipating is possible, perhaps even probable in the next year. While it's true, open space and farmland represent very important issues for this county, and those programs have had support from all of the boards of commissioners that I have sat on in varying means. The fact is that we do have time to develop meaningful and as well as responsible policies and funding means that pursue well-defined goals there. There is no crisis of farmland in this county. And contrary to popular presentation, these funds do virtually nothing to halt development, which I know is a major concern to some. We received one email in response to the media coverage. I believe it came in today, maybe it was last week, from one individual who urged us to vote for this and proceed with these increases because his reason, we need to stop development. So that shows you there's certainly a perception is being perpetuated by the means in which this has been done. And yet, the program guidelines for these cases specifically state that this is not an anti-development program. In fact, those farms that qualify specifically rise to the top of the list because they are in areas that are not threatened by development. If this is an anti-development plan, then that should be reflected in the guidelines and we should pursue it in that manner, which would of course change the nature of the selection process. So this is just one example of the disconnect that's going on here between the public rhetoric regarding these preservation programs and the reality of how they're administered and how much they cost. We need time to iron these things out. We need time to figure out what the right solution is that still protects the dollars that we have in the bank, rather than plowing ahead and expecting that we will just be able to raise the taxes later. It's been stated in this room numerous times that the public is ready and willing, even anxious to raise taxes for these programs. If that is so, then let's not put ourselves deep into the hole as a previous board did. Let's address the real costs of it up front before we do more damage similar to what was done a few years back on a number of issues. So this board should undertake a robust due diligence effort to determine the best and most cost-effective approach instead of just throwing money at existing programs that make a high-profile point, because that high-profile message also comes at a very, very high cost. It's probably not sustainable. Thus, that puts the future of these efforts once again at risk. You spend more than you got, pretty soon you're not going to have anything to spend, even legitimately. So we should approach this issue with great care and with great concern for its impact on our finances and the finances of our citizens who are going to bear the cost of this. We have the time to do that, and I believe we should do that. So unfortunately, it has not been the initiative of this board to take that time and to make that decision in the manner I've outlined. I feel I have very little choice other than to express my displeasure with the means of doing this and the unsustainability of doing this to a no vote on this budget.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Gary. I'll make a few comments before we vote, folks. First of all, the county is looking into a long-term strategy as far as funding farmland preservation and the land partnerships program. These programs, in my opinion, have been inconsistently consistent in the funding. The land partnerships program was pretty much non-existent for 6 years. It's now been back on the table. The farmland preservation program has been very successful since its inception. He had 2 public meetings on November 17th and December 1st, where a proposal by Commissioner Kirchler was brought up to increase funding by another $250,000 this year, which equates to about 1/3 of 1% of our entire budget, and which I understand this year we will be leveraging enough funds to save about 835 additional acres. The state gives us or provides a lot of funding for farmland preservation and matching funds. This year, they have increased that funding another $5 million through the cigarette tax. The thing is, folks, with the way we're hearing the state budget may be in the next few years, that money may not be there for future grants for farmland preservation. So my personal thought, among other reasons to support this, is let's take advantage of that state money while it exists. The biggest cost for our county, to give them to you in order: salary and benefits, 51%. Keeping our prison going, 17%. Other human services, 8%. Our courts, 6%. Farmland preservation, again, in total, about 2/3%. Again, we are looking at long-term goals and strategies for this, but for this upcoming year, a decision had to be made by today what is being spent on farmland preservation. You know, this farmland preservation, folks, is not the whipping boy for the budget. There are far more expensive things that we have to deal with than farmland preservation. I appreciate my colleagues' comments, but I will be certainly voting in favor of this budget.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, if you're finished.
I'm finished, yes, thank
Okay.
you.
The late Governor Robert Casey said, in terms of some advice to all those who have been entrusted to serve the public in elective office, that he asked the question, what did you do when you had the power? And the fact of the matter is that, as my colleague has just mentioned, this is a relatively small piece of this total budget. But that additional investment, which is roughly 2/3% of the overall $76 million general fund budget, when cobbled together with other resources, will allow us to preserve an additional 835 acres of prime farmland in perpetuity. And I know my colleague, I think Mr. Eckelberger, had said the other day that the days of measuring success by dollars spent are over, and I would agree with that. It is in fact results that matter. And unlike our public investment in so many other governmental programs where success may not be so easily or immediately recognizable or quantifiable, that's not the case with our investment in farmland preservation. So here's the deal. I do not believe that spending less than 1% of our county's overall $76 million general fund budget to save additional acreage of prime farmland from development is too much to spend. especially since farmland preservation is supposed to be a county priority in both our current and our future county comprehensive plans. I do believe that our county investment of $500,000 for farmland preservation in the 2017 program year, up from $250,000 in 2016, but only half of the $1 million recommended by our Farmland Preservation Board, is a reasonable compromise within the constraints of available revenues and without the need for any tax increase. We do know that this county investment is in line to draw down state matching funds of more than $1.50 for each county dollar committed, and will allow us ultimately to preserve an estimated additional 835 acres of top quality farmland in our county. We also know that with respect to other agricultural leading counties, that Cumberland County lags behind. We also know that based on an analysis by our Agricultural Extension Office, that by preserving those 835 additional acres, in addition to preserving open space and protecting groundwater supplies, that we are safeguarding more than $12 million in economic value annually by preserving production agriculture. So in this case, I believe we know exactly what our investment will pay in terms of dividends for generations, not just today, but for generations that follow. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. We do have a motion and a second. In favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
We have a majority vote to. Next, we have ordinance 2016-2, setting the 2017 tax millage rate. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second.
You will second the motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any
Just
comments?
to be clear on this ordinance, essentially, it is to hold the line on county general fund taxes. And then this ordinance also contains the increase, which averages out to about $4 for every household in the library taxes, I understand, which is less than 1% of our overall county tax millage.
I believe that is a correct understanding. The overall tax millage increases a little less than 1%. Is there any other comment?
I have one quick
Yes.
clarification. I'm going to vote for this because there's no net plus up for the non-library side of the general fund, despite the fact that we are drawing down reserves conservative under the new budget. I do not approve of the budget. However, it's not having a material impact on the tax millage rate that we intended to establish and will continue to establish as a result of the budget. So to me, it's perfectly consistent.
Just one comment on that. Comment about drawing down reserves. That may or may not happen in full or entirety. The current reserves as of today are 27.7 million. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, gentlemen? Okay, is there, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3 ayes, no objections, so it's unanimous approval on the tax millage rate. Next, we have approval of funding for court security equipment. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, but I want to thank our budget staff for departing now.
Thanks.
Part of this
Yes, thank you.
Go have an adult beverage.
after 4:30.
After 4:30.
4:30.
Thank you, Commissioner Porter. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. If it hasn't been made.
I'm sorry, Gary made the motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any comment on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, we have item 12, sub-item 1, items A through D. Is there a motion for approval? Approval of contracts and grants. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comment? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have Item 12, Section 2, new contracts, vendor service grants, et cetera. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the 2017-2019 excess workers' compensation insurance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval to authorize advertising for the participation in the purchase of food by Cumberland County facilities. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comment? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of application for 2016 Oars Bridge liquid fuels encumbrance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, any questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval of capital projects requests from our planning department. We'll start with Jim's Bridge, bridge rehabilitation, or Ursula Bridge, excuse me, the bridge rehabilitation total project cost $1,138,100.
Is that just copy, correct?
Yes.
That's how we got it named it, so we got the naming
Maybe
rights.
right, so.
Is there a motion?
I think Commissioner Heckelberger made the motion.
Yeah.
And I'll second the motion. And just for the record, it's not my bridge.
Very good.
That's what they all say.
All in favor of the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have, I suppose it's Edie Bridge. Preservation work, turtle project cost $650,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have Cumberland Bridge, replacement slated for 2017. Total project cost is $2,338,497. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Motion carries. Next, we have approval for reappointment of Gene Shea, Teresa Davis, and Ann Bollig to the Aging Advisory Board for a 3-year term commencing January 2017 and expiring December 31st, 2019. And approval for appointment of Susan Charles to the Aging Advisory Board for a 3-year term commencing January 1st, 2017 and expiring December 31st, 2019. And approval for the appointment of John Seaton to fill a vacancy on the Aging Advisory Board that will end December 31st, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval for the appointment of C. Lou Concert to the Cumberland County Library System Board for a 3-year term commencing January 1, 2017 and expiring December 31st, 2019. And approval for appointment of Judy Soderette to serve as an alternate to the Cumberland County Library System Board for a 3-year term commencing January 1, 2017 and expiring December 31, 2019. Is there a motion?
Sure about those dates? I'll move for approval.
If they're not sure right now.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next is approval of recommendation for the appointment of yours truly to the Cumberland County Local Emergency Planning Committee for a 1-year term. I'll be replacing Commissioner Ursula. Term is January 1, 2017 and December 31, 2017.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have approval for reappointment of John Evie and Robert Weaver to the Cumberland County Blighted Property Reinvestment Board for a 2-year term commencing January 1, 2017 and expiring December 31, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And next, we have approval of general disbursement transfer authorizations, items 21A through G. Is there a motion? For a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'd like to report executive sessions held December 1st, discuss personnel issues. I'd also like to mention acceptance of monthly reports, change of assessments and Veterans Affairs for the month of November. Is there any other business to be brought in front of the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So
Thank you. We are adjourned.